I know that it's already November and that I should be showing you my October reading journal pages, which I will do at some point, but I decided to share with you my September pages instead. I have set this up during the course of September, but as you all know, that month was one of the busiest for me, and even though this video was filmed on time, I never got around to editing and publishing it until now. Better late than never, I think, so let's jump straight back to September. The first thing I always do when I film these videos is filling out the starting pages of this journal. One of the pages is books read in 2024, and in September I read 8 books, which is not too bad. Some months I read more than others, but let's say that on average I read 10 books per month. Next up, after this page, I am filling out my goals page where I'm coloring all the little squares that correspond to the number of books I've read in a month. I've started this journal in April, and I have to say that I'm quite pleased that with September included, I have read 64 books. As you will see the moment I'm done coloring these squares, I already set up the cover page, the stats page, and reading progress calendar off camera, because at that point in time I wasn't sure if I was going to film this video. The stationery I used to set these pages up are from a weekly planner kit called Chapter from Harriet Wright Designs shop, and the black red washi tape that I got from AliExpress. To be honest, I think this is my favorite setup so far because of the color combinations, black and purple. I use the calendar page to track my reading progress, so when I started and finished a book, and even though it might seem pointless, I really like that overview in one place. I don't know, it makes me happy when I look at it at the end of the month, if that makes sense, so that's why I do it. September was an exciting month reading wise because I participated in the Magical Readathon. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, Magical Readathon is a full year reading challenge created by G on Book Roast. It reminds a bit of D&D, to be honest. You create a character and then you set off on a reading adventure. Every month you read a book that corresponds to a year in LDA challenge, where the prompts are listed for each month, and twice a year there is a full month readathon in April and August, though this year it was moved to September. So all the book review spread that you'll see me creating in this video are related to the books I have read for this readathon. One thing I want to point out before we jump into the book reviews is that I never give spoilers in my voiceovers, so don't read what I'm writing, unless you don't mind the spoilers, of course. The first book I have read is Belladonna by Adalyn Grace. To decorate the page, I used a light purple washi tape and the grid washi tape that I got on Temu, along with the gorgeous floral washi tape from the washi tape shop called Floor Trilogy. As always, I'll leave the link of all the supplies I used in the description box below, or I should say everything that's still being sold. Belladonna was a cozy read for me. Right at the beginning of the book, we are told that Signa, our female protagonist, comes from a very rich family, and right around the time when she was born, her family threw a party where all those who attended, including her mother and father, pass away. Another fact about Signa is that she cannot die, and that her constant companion is Death himself. So, fast forward in the future, we have a 19-year-old Signa who was raised by a number of guardians, more interested in her wealth than her well-being, and they all die one way or another. Her remaining relatives are Hawthorns, a rather eccentric family, and she goes to live with them. The book was really fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. That's why I gave it a 10 for enjoyment on the Copile rating system. I do have to say that the plot was somewhat predictable, so in that regard, as well as the intrigue, I gave it a slightly lower score. I can't reveal more than that because otherwise I'll spoil the book. Overall, I gave the book 3.5 stars, though after I have filmed this and thought more about the book, I think I lowered the score on the logic part of the book, so I'll probably rectify that. I think this book deserves a bit more than 3.5 stars, especially if I compare it to some other books I read in September that were definitely not quite as good as this one. Next up, I have read Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This is the second book by this author that I've read, and frankly I wasn't sure if I was going to like it given the fact that Bride was a very bad book in my opinion. However, I was pleasantly surprised by this one. It's far from a masterpiece, but I enjoyed it much more than Bride. The main female protagonist is Mallory Greenleaf, who is a chess genius, but she stopped playing chess 4 years prior to the plot of the book. I won't reveal the reason because this is mentioned at a later point in the book. Mallory is solely focused on her family, her mom and two younger sisters. She decides not to attend college because she needs to work to support her family. However, her life goes through a major change once she plays in a chess tournament dedicated to charity and beats Nolan Sawyer, the male protagonist, who is in fact the current world champion. He becomes obsessed with her because she beat him in chess, and so the story begins. It was another cozy read for me, and I might read more books from this author, though her writing style still isn't my cup of tea. Nonetheless, I gave this book 3.5 stars, which is way more than the 2 stars Bride got. Or was it 1.5 stars? I honestly can't remember, it was a while ago. As for the decorations, I decided to leave this page simple, apart from hand lettering the title with the Tombow dual brush pen and making a frame along the edges of the page with the same pink pen. The Midnight Watch is a type of book I thought I wouldn't read because I've been so into romance and fantasy this year. However, it was an interesting read. It's a fictional telling of what might have occurred with SS Californian and her crew, a ship that wasn't too far away from the place where Titanic sank in the evening of April 14th, 1912. The story focuses on the captain of the ship, Stanley Lord, and his second officer, Herbert Stone. Stone saw Titanic firing distress rockets, 8 of them, and even though he informed the captain about it, Stanley Lord did nothing about it, not believing those were emergency rockets. The main character is actually a journalist who normally writes articles about the dead people and gives them one last moment of glory after their death, celebrating their life or something like that. He is the one who chases both the survivors of Titanic and the 2 men from SS Californian so that he can piece together the story about all those people who died on Titanic. It's important to mention that SS Californian did exist along with the captain and second officer that I mentioned, but the story revolving around the journalist is completely fictional. This was the 3rd book that I read this month that got 3.5 stars, and as you'll see soon, it won't be the last. I decorated this page using the brownish grid washi tape along with this dark sand colored paper and some stamp stickers with maps on them that I got on AliExpress. I also found among my stash of stamps this stamp with a boat, and naturally it was a perfect stamp to use on this page. The Honeymoon Crashers was an audiobook that I listened to this month, the second one in my life, since audiobooks really weren't my thing. However, I was determined to listen to this book because I've read The Unhoneymooners and wanted to know what this one was about. If you haven't read it, skip this book review because it will spoil the first book. The Honeymoon Crashers focuses on Amy Torres, unlike the first book where the focus was on her twin sister Olive. Amy had a fair share of misery in the first book, and after her disastrous wedding and the Torres family wedding curse, their parents are on non-speaking terms by the way, so they believe there's a curse placed on them. Amy is determined to organize a perfect wedding for Olive and to break the curse. Of course, Olive and her fiance pair Amy up with Brody, the best man, to help her organize the wedding, but the real reason is of course that they hope Amy and Brody will fall for each other. The book got 3.5 stars because I read it as an audiobook and I loved the narrators. If I would have read it as a regular book, I probably would have enjoyed it much less, and therefore the book would have gotten a lower rating. You can only read this as an audiobook by the way. I kept the decoration rather simple, using this beautiful washi tape from the washi tape shop called Butterfly Emporium, I think. I am not 100% sure because I couldn't find it on the website when I was filming this. Later on when I looked it up again, I definitely couldn't find it, so I think it's sold out. The Summoning is the 5th book I've read in September, and despite rather bad reviews on Goodreads, which I won't read anymore, I ended up liking it even though I was prejudiced when I started reading it. Thank you, Goodreads! Anyway, we follow yet another female protagonist on her supernatural adventure. Chloe Saunders seems like a normal schoolgirl at first, but she's anything but normal. Why? Well, she can see ghosts. After an incident in school, she gets taken to Lyle House, a private clinic for rich kids that have mental issues, or so we're told at the beginning of the book. There she meets people who aren't actually insane but are supernatural instead. The book was interesting, though the writing style is a bit juvenile, which I can understand. This is after all intended for younger readers. I'm curious enough to read the second book, which I'll probably do in the coming months. I gave the book 3 stars and 3/4, which is slightly higher than the previous 4. Of Glass and Lavender is the worst book I've read this month. it's also the most boring one. It's a large book with million pages but barely any action. I really don't mind reading books that have a lots of pages, but the world building has to be really good. This book had no world building or very minimal. The main female character is cursed to sort of die and then come back to life, though each time she dies it becomes more difficult for her to come back. Then she meets a group of vampires, Viva's Nest, who take a big interest in her because of how she smells. Also, even though they're vampires, one of them is also a werewolf. Interesting, but never explained how it is possible for him to be both. She gets entangled in a weird relationship with the four of them, and that's what the story is about. Her falling for all four weirdos written on million pages. This book is a definition of a slow burn taken to a next level, because after pages and pages gushing about her falling for the vampires, we get one lousy kiss and no real story nor world building. I definitely won't be reading the remaining books in the series unless my brain needs to read something stupid. I gave the book 2.5 stars because there were teeny tiny elements that were interesting, but really teeny tiny. Still, I enjoyed decorating this spread to make it at least look nice, even though the book was bad. I used the craft paper from a bullet journal I have lying around, ripped pieces of it, glued it across the 2 pages, and the only decoration is the central floral in the middle of the spread. The floral is a part of a PT tape from the washi tape shop called Cobalt Blue. This one is one of my favorites, though I'm quite sure that I say that a lot when I use their washi and PT tapes. And now we're finally down to the last 2 books I read in September, and they're also my highest rated reads, Crown of Feathers and Heart of Flames. They're books 1 and 2 from the Crown of Feathers trilogy, and I love them both. In a world ruled by fierce warrior queens, a grand empire was built on the backs of phoenix riders, legendary heroes who soared through the sky on wings of fire, until a war between 2 sisters ripped it apart. 16 years after the war has ended is where the book begins. We follow the story of 2 sisters, Veronica, a war orphan who dreams of becoming a phoenix rider from the legends, and her sister Val, who is very controlling and cold-hearted. After a shocking betrayal from her sister, Veronica sets out on a journey to find the riders and join their ranks. I can't say more, but I really like that we had phoenixes instead of dragons, and even though we have a rather innocent love story developing in the books, that's not the focus of the books. The books are focused on the 2 sisters, their character development, and especially on Veronica maturing. I highly recommend these 2, and I assume the 3rd book won't disappoint me, though I'm yet to read it. I gave Crown of Feathers 4 stars and a quarter, and 4.5 stars to Heart of Flames. Before I finish off this video, there is something I have to confess. Some of you may wonder if my reading journal is different from what I used in the previous videos, and you'll be right to assume that. The previous notebook I used was Stalogy 365, and I really loved it, but I found it a bit limiting for the things I wanted to do with my reading journal. For those of you who never used the Stalogy notebook before, it's a notebook that has Tomoe River paper, which is very thin and is perfect for fountain pen users. That's why I picked it up in the first place. However, the more stickers and ephemera I added, the bulkier the book got, and I started having difficulties using it. Also, there were quite some spreads that I didn't like or didn't set up in a good way, so that started bothering me a lot. Now, one might say, Dragona, you could have just ignored it, continued using it, and set up 2025 the way you want, and you'd be right to think that way. But I came to a point where I wasn't enjoying using that notebook anymore, and that really made me sad. So I found this bullet journal in my stash and set it up all over again. I love the thicker paper, and I can add all the ephemera I want without the pages getting wrinkled or the journal bulking up too much. The only thing I dislike a little bit is that some fountain pens feather and some don't. That's a downside compared to a notebook that has Tomoe River paper. And now we've come to the final flip through of all the pages you've seen me set up. I hope you enjoyed watching watching this video and maybe one of the books I've read intrigued you enough to pick it up yourself. If so, please let me know in the comments below which one it is. If you've read all the books, let me know which one is your favorite and why. You can also leave me book recommendations in the comments. I always love to pick up something new. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and maybe even consider subscribing. If you don't, that's also fine. I'll see you again very soon. Bye.